Hello, are you ready to learn for today? Our lesson for today will be all about solving equations in quadratic form. So this lesson will have three videos as we cater three different equations that we can transform into a quadratic form. So later on, I will explain these three different cases. But for now, here are the things that you should already know. So first, by now you should already know these different methods on solving quadratic equation. We'll use one of them or two of them from the different examples, but we will often use this extracting square root and factoring, and we'll try if we can have one example about quadratic formula. But by now you should already know these methods. Next, determining the LCD or the least common denominator of a rational expression. On the third video of this lesson, we will be having an example that is a rational equation. So you should already know how to solve or how to identify the least common denominator. If not, you can watch the video about the way on determining the least common denominator of a rational expression that is included on the third video of this lesson. So we'll go through that. So, how do we solve equations in quadratic form? So, meron tayo ditong tatlong cases na kung saan may tatlong equations tayo na itatransform natin into a quadratic equation. Or somehow, these equations can be transformed into a quadratic form. So, from that, maaari na nating gamitin yung iba't ibang methods in solving quadratic equation to solve for their roots as well. So, in order to determine whether a certain equation can be solved using the same method as in quadratic equation, you may do or consider any of this following. So, ito yung mga tatlong cases natin. First, if the equation can be written in the form of am squared plus bm plus c is equal to 0, where m is an algebraic expression. So, mamaya, makita nyo, although this looks like a quadratic equation, standard form, itong m na to is iba yung itsura niya or isa siyang algebraic expression. So, makakita kayo ng example niyan mamaya. Next, for complicated equations, you can make it simple by replacing a new variable for an expression in the equation. So, ito yung case 2 natin, which is the same thing na din naman na gagawin natin sa number 1 or first case natin. Pero, mas komplikado lang to ng kaunti, si number 2 or si case 2. And for the third one is considering the solutions of a rational algebraic equation. So during your grade 8, you will already discuss how to solve rational algebraic equation. Ganun pa rin naman yung gagawin natin on the third case. Pero in that solving part, we will convert or will transform that rational algebraic expression or equation into a quadratic equation. So, yun lang yung pagkakaiba. So, on this video, we'll just be discussing this first case. Okay, let's discuss this first case as we have one equation or the first type of equation that can be transformed into a quadratic form. So, as we have the given x raised to 4 minus 7x squared plus 12 is equal to 0. From this, we'll be having an equation that is having a highest degree, which is 4. And yes, it is not a quadratic equation, but rather a quartic equation. But as long as it is in this type of equation, we can transform it into a quadratic form. So on the left side of this presentation, you can also see that we have 5 different steps in solving this type of equation, and one of that is creating or transforming it into a quadratic form. So as we start, it says that express x raised to 4 into x squared raised to 2. So, yun daw yung first step natin. And yes, x squared raised to 2 is equivalent to x raised to 4. So, x squared raised to 2 minus 7. Then, copy the rest. So, 7x squared plus 12 is equal to 0. So, yan yung first step natin. Yan. So, second step, represent x squared to a dummy variable. So, dummy variable yung tawag ko dun sa variable na pwede nating ipalit dun sa x squared para maging simplified or maging quadratic form na siya. So, paano yung sinasabi kong dummy variable? So, ito kahit anong letters from the alphabet pwede mong gamitin. Small letter lang. So, for me, ikaw, pwede yung first letter yung ng pangalan mo. So, from me, Edward. So, letter E. So, let E is equal to x squared. Yan lang naman yung ibig sabihin. I-represent natin si x squared kasi as you can see, two equations or two terms of the equations have x squared. So, ito daw yung first step. Nag-represent ka ng isang letter or variable dun sa x squared. That's the second step. So, we're done. So, lagyan na natin. This one is step number 1 and this one is step number 2. Then, step number 3, it says that you have to create a quadratic form of the equation using the dummy variable. So, ang gagawin natin ganito. Tignan nyo ah. So, we have x squared here. All we have to do is to replace this with the dummy variable e. So, instead of x squared, we'll just write e. But don't forget, meron pa tayong square dito, so we write it as e squared. Yan. Minus 7. So, since we have another x squared here, papalitan natin siya once again ng e. Is n plus, copy mo lang yung 12 is equal to 0. So, as you can see, this looks like a quadratic equation already. That's why in this first case, sinabi dito na it is in the form of am squared plus bm plus c is equal to 0 where m is an algebraic expression. Kasi at dito, ito yung nagiging m natin si e. Hindi technically ang value niya ay just e. Pero sa loob na tong e na to, equivalent niya ay x squared. Yun yung tinatawag nating algebraic expression. So mamaya malalaman natin kung paano isosolve yung x squared gamit tong equation na to. But for now, that's the third step. And this is already our quadratic form. Quadratic form is equal to a e squared minus 7e plus 12 is equal to 0. So yun ang ating quadratic form. Next, we go to the fourth step. So ano sabi ni fourth step? Solve for the quadratic form of the equation using any method of solving quadratic equation. So, ito na kasi ay quadratic equation na itsura niya. So, we can solve for the value of e using any method of solving quadratic equation. So, ang pipiliin ko na method would be, isa sa pinakamadaling method is factoring. So, I think I can do factoring with this equation. So, for me to factor this one, I can have two factors that having a product of 12 and a sum of negative 7. So, ano kaya yon? And kung naisip mo ay e minus 3 times e minus 4, tama yung factors mo. So, yan. Tutuloy pa natin to kasi kailangan natin mag-solve for the value of e. So, e minus 3 is equal to 0. Yan, i-divide natin, di ba? Dalawang equation yan. Then, e minus 4 is equal to 0. So, from that, we can equate. Then, ang gagawin natin is, solve ko muna yung dito sa left side na equation natin. We add 3 for both sides. So, we can have an equation. Ano mangyayari dyan? So, ito magiging 0 na. So, we'll end up on the equation having the value of e is equivalent to 3. So, ayan na isa natin. 3. Next is e raised to 4. We can add 4. E minus 4 pala is equal to 0. So, we can add 4 for both sides. So, then, we simplify. So, we can have this one is equal to 0. Therefore, our final equation is e is equal to 4. So, ayan na yung naging dalawang values ng ating equation. So, tapos na natin si 4. Na-solve na natin yung values ng equation. But as you can see, we were able to solve for the value of e. But if you take a look at the given, it's not asking for the value of e but rather the variable x. Kaya nga meron tayo nitong step number 5. It says, finally, solve for the roots using the original variable. So, gagamitin na natin yung variable x. So, paano natin gagawin yon? So, continue natin. Dito we'll be having step number 5. So, step number 5 says, solve na natin yung roots gamit yung original equation. So, manggagaling tayo dun sa na-solve natin na values ni e. So, we have e is equal to 3. 3 muna. And e is equal to 4. So, babalik tayo dun sa ginawa natin kanina na we know that e is equal to x squared. Tama? So, yan. Take note natin yan. So, from that, isosolve na natin yung value ni x by replacing that e into x squared. So, yan. Instead of e, ibabalik natin ngayon sa x squared. Pero kung titingnan nyo, mas simplified na yung equation natin ngayon. So, x squared is equal to 3 and x squared is equal to 4. Kasi itong e, pinalitan ko na rin ng x squared. So, from that, natin natin yung equation. So, from that, we can solve for each of the value of x by extracting square root. Kasi kung titingnan nyo, x squared is equal to c na yung form niya. So, first, solve ko muna yung nandito sa left side na equation. So, x squared is equal to 3. To solve for this one, we can get the square root of both sides so that we can have x is equal to, wala naman ng perfect square si 3. So, ang magiging sagot dyan is positive, negative square root of 3. So, yun na yung magiging sagot natin. Next, is if we solve this on the right side of the equation, so x squared is equal to 4. Ganun din yung gagawin natin. Extract square root for both sides so that we can remove that x squared here. Then, we'll have the equation x is equal to positive negative 2. And so, kung bibilangin nyo yung sagot, ito yung mga solutions na meron tayo. So, the solutions are, so lagay natin dyan, solutions are, the solutions are, i-arrange natin least to greatest, pinakamababa. So, pinakamababa dyan is negative 2, then negative square root of 3, then positive square root of 3, and positive 2. So, those are your solutions. Yes, apat yung makikita nating solution. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sir, bakit? Sa quadratic equation, dalawa lang or maximum of 2 real roots. Pero dito, apat yung nakita natin. That is because this is not a quadratic equation but rather quartic. Apat yan. Kasi kung gusto nyo malaman kung ilan yung maximum number of real roots, titignan mo yung highest exponent which is 4. Kaya sila apat. Okay, let's discuss another example para mas maintindihan natin kung paano nagagamit yung mga steps na to at para magkaroon din tayo ng idea kung pwede ba tayong gumamit ng ibang way on solving or ibang method on solving quadratic equation. So, this time, hindi ako gagamit ng factoring. So, we consider the same at the same type of equation, x raised to 4 minus 10x squared minus 11 is equal to 0. So, parehas lang sila ng itsura ng equation natin kanina. And then, we'll still follow this 5 steps. So, pag ganito yung itsura ng equation nyo, we can transform this into quadratic form using this following step. And we can also solve this equation using these 5 steps as well. So, punta tayo ulit sa step number 1. It says, yan, step number 1 tayo. It says convert or express x raised to 4 into x squared raised to 2. So, let's follow step number 1 by replacing this one into x squared raised to 2. So, para lang makita natin kung ano yung mga papalitan natin mamaya. So, yan. Yan lang yung step na yan. Then, minus 10x squared. Copy lang natin yung mga kasama niya sa right side. So, 11 is equal to 0. So, that's step number 1. Replace or express x raised to 4 into x squared raised to 2. Then after that, it says represent x squared to a dummy variable. So yan, once again, kahit anong letter yung pwede mong gamitin dito. So ako, I'm using letter E because that's the first letter of my name. 'Di ba? Pwede na palang variable. Para part ka rin ng pagsosolve mo. So ayan, E ulit ako. E is equal to x squared. So, ganun lang ulit yung step natin. So, yan yung aking gagawing dummy variable. So, si E yung aking dummy variable. So, that's step 2. Then, anong sabi? Step 3, create the quadratic form of the equation using the dummy variable. So, ito yung step 3 natin. Create daw tayo gamit yung E. So, all we need to do is to replace x squared. So, ito ulit, papalitan natin siya ng E. So, gagawin natin E squared. Kasi nga 'di ba, x squared palitan ng e, pero may square ka pa dito kaya siya e squared. Minus e, itong, mali, mali, hindi 10. 10 muna. So, 10, then x squared. May x squared tayo dyan. So, papalitan natin siya ngayon ng e. Yan. Minus 11 is equal to 0. So, copyin lang natin si minus 11 is equal to 0. And that is your quadratic form yan. Tandaan, itong step 3, you will have your quadratic form. So, kapag tinanong kunyari sa inyong exercise, what is the quadratic form? Ito lang isusulat nyo, yung merong e. And step number 4, solve the quadratic form of the equation using any method of solving quadratic equation. Yan, so sabi dyan, any method. So ako, sabi ko kanina, hindi ako gagamit ng factoring. Paano naman kung pwede rin ba siya kapag quadratic formula yung gagamitin natin? Sige, tingnan natin kung pwede quadratic formula. So, first step in quadratic formula is identifying if it is in standard form. Yan, mukha naman nasa standard form na siya. Second is to identify the values of A, B, and C. So, dito, ano kayang A natin? A is equal to 1. Then, B is equal to negative 10. So, ito siya. Then, C is equal to negative 11. So, ayan yung values ng A, B, and C natin. Second is sige, sulat natin yung quadratic formula. So, since we are using variable e, instead of x, gawin natin siyang e, is equal to negative b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Yan. So, from that, we substitute the values. So, e is equal to negative. So, negative ng b. Ano ba yung b natin? Negative 10. So, tandaan, pag may negative pa, susulat din natin yung negative na yon. So, negative of negative 10 yan. Plus minus the square root of b squared. So, we have b is equal to negative 10. So, negative 10 squared minus 4. So, extend natin yan. 4a. So, a is 1. Then, c is negative 11. So, 4 times 1 times negative 11. All over 2a. So, 2a, palitan pala natin yung a ng 1. So, since a is equal to 1. Then, we furtherly simplify this one. Yung negative of negative 10, gawin natin 10 na lang. Plus minus the square root of, let's simplify negative 10 squared. So, we'll be having 100 minus 4. So, multiply mo natin si 1 tsaka si negative 11. So, we have 4 times negative 11 all over 2 times 1 is 2. Then, continue natin yung equation dito. So, we'll be having E is equal to, so, check natin from this one, we can have, ito, equivalent to kay negative 44, di ba? And negative 44 times, negative 4 times negative 11, positive na pala siya. So, dapat, ang magiging itsura na niyan is 100 plus 44. Kasi negative 11 times negative 4 is positive 44. So, 100 plus 4 na siya. So, dito, simplify natin. So, ang itsura na dapat ng equation mo ay 10 plus minus square root of 100 plus 4 is 144 all over 2. So, yun na. Pasimple na ng pasimple equation natin. E is equal to, so, square root ni 144. This one, ang square root ni 144 ay 12. So, ang itsura ng equation natin is 10 plus minus 12 all over 2. Then, so from here, we will consider 1s plus, 1s minus. So, divide natin yung equation natin into 2. So, 1 is having e is equal to 10 plus 12 over 2. And 1 is having e is equal to 10 minus 12 all over 2. So, let's solve muna yung nasa left side. So E is equal to 10 plus 12 is equal to 22 over 2. So E is equal to 11 or positive 11. Next, dito naman sa right side, yung isang value ng E natin, we have 10 minus 12 is negative 2. Then, divided by 2, E is equal to negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. So, ayun yung value ng E natin. And we're done with step 4. Yan, na-solve na natin yung values ng dummy variable natin na E. But hindi pa dyan natatapos kasi x raised to 2 nga tayo or x yung sinusolve nating variable, x raised to 4. So, apat dapat yung sagot. At the same time, x yung variable na kailangan nating solve. So, we have to do step 5 pa. So, step 5, ang sabi niya, you will replace all of the values of E with the original variable and solve for the value of that original variable. So, balik natin yung idea na E is equal to x squared. Yung kanina, yung ginawa nating dummy variable. And let's try if we can solve each of them. So, dito sa left side, ang magiging equation natin is instead of E is equal to 11, magiging x squared is equal to 11 na siya. Then dito naman, instead of E is equal to negative 1, magiging x squared is equal to negative 1. Yan. So, from here, solve muna natin yung nandito. Sa left side, x squared is equal to 11. So, we get the square root of both sides. To solve for this equation, extracting square root tayo. Then, we'll be having x is equal to positive, negative, square root of 11. And since 11 is not a perfect square naman, dito naman, we get the square root of both sides ulit. Yan, so, square root natin parehas. Then, square root of negative 1. Diba? So, ang magiging itsura niyan x is equal to positive, negative, square root of negative 1. And by having that, we know that this square root of a negative number will not give us a real root. Diba? So, kapag ganyan yung nangyari sa inyo, ang sagot natin dyan, diba, palagi is no real solution or not real. So, we cannot consider square root of negative 1 as a part of our real solution. So, ano ngayon yung magiging sagot natin? So, our answers now, so the roots are, or the solutions, so mas maganda yung solutions. Ayusin natin sulat. The solutions are just negative 11 or negative square root of 11 and positive square root of 11. And that will be your answer for this one. Sir, akala ko ba apat? So, sabi ko, maximum number of real roots yung pwedeng apat. So, pwede ring dalawa. Kasi maximum lang naman yon. Pwedeng dalawa or pwede ring wala yung real roots. Katulad kasi nito is yung dalawang roots natin is not real. Kaya ang solution natin, ito lang, yung dalawa. Okay, so those are the two examples on solving this case 1. So, try mo naman. So, I have here your exercise. So, transform the following equations into quadratic form and solve for the unknown variable. So, quadratic form yung makukuha mong equation pagkatapos mo ng step number 3. So, isusulat mo lang din dyan yun, then your solution. So, by the way, you can solve the quadratic form using different methods in solving quadratic equation. So, pause the video for 5 seconds to solve this given equation. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so I hope na-solve mo na siya. Tingnan natin, anong ginamit mo? Factoring ba? Or quadratic formula? So ako, gumamit ako ng factoring kasi parang mas maigsi yun. But you can also use quadratic formula to solve the value for E. And pares pa rin naman yung makukuha mo. So the answer will be negative 4 and positive 4. And that's the end of our case 1. I hope you understand the lesson for today. Until next time, bye!